For the past 2 years, I have sat here, maybe not in this very same couch with this very same lime popsicle cover. I've sat here and I've discussed 6 Feet Under records in the last 2 years that I've done so. They have both ended up as the worst albums of the year. It's really a sad state of affairs in the SFU camp. Here I am again, 3 years running for the 3rd straight year. Is this going to be a Triforce of shit? What's going on here? Torment by 6 Feet Under with a cover that looks interesting, kind of like a weird, twisted, contorted TIE fighter of dumb. This is 12 tracks. This band is pumping out and producing material at a very, very fast volume, and it's almost kind of scary because that makes you think they're not stopping to think about anything. Chris Barnes, who are you anymore? We've gotten so many jokes and so many different conversation pieces, so much anger out of our system over the past 2 years. Let's take a look at this 12-track affair, and hopefully we have something positive to talk about. Now, right out of the gate, I have to say something. Whenever it comes to the musical construction of this album, I feel that there is a little bit more death and roll that's being presented at times. There's a little bit of doom from here and there, and these are in very trace amounts, very small digits are really being presented here out of the full 100%. But I do like where this goes musically in some portions. I like the fact that they take the concept of death metal and they at times are able to really extend it a little bit to different avenues, try to give it a little bit of a real pulse, I suppose, because the last 2 albums, and what was really amazing about last year was the album that got the worst album, the Graveyard Classics 4, it was a covers album, and somehow it felt really motionless. There does feel to be a little bit more motion on this record, and that's one positive charm that it does boast, but it doesn't do enough. Once again, it doesn't do enough. And this is by no means the fault of the musicians that are playing behind Chris Barnes. It really is not. I feel that if these same ideas were presented with somebody else, or a different band, or perhaps we're taking a little bit of a different direction, if there was some input that was sort of throwing things against some other wall aside from the one that was being thrown against, that this would be fine. It would probably be a very average album. It would probably be one that would maybe barely crack above average if you are really being kind, if you are ambitious one day. But it would crack the egg as just a standard run-of-the-mill death metal album, and that would be acceptable. Chris Barnes' vocals, once again, for the 3rd year in a row, really. And I have nothing against Chris Barnes, by the way. I think that needs to be made explicitly clear. I have nothing against Chris Barnes whatsoever. The words that I say, the insults perhaps that I sling, the criticism that I dish out is simply based around what is heard. And I have to kind of offset all of this with a story momentarily. But Sacrificial Kill going into Exploratory Homicide, both are able to really have a nice musical backbone, but these vocals sound tattered, tortured, which I guess death metal you really want that to do, but it feels amateur. At some point in time, Chris Barnes' vocals have deteriorated so much where they no longer feel like they are top tier. They instead feel like they are amateur, that's being done and harnessed a little bit through some studio thematics and given a little bit of a backbone. It's supposed to make it sound like it has a lot of ass, but instead it sounds like he swallowed the microphone and is just gargling whatever he wants to say. And it's very distracting. That's the thing. Whenever you listen to death metal, you don't expect a lot of distraction. You expect to be sort of assaulted from all directions, a real cacophony that is going to deliver an experience that sounds like hell. This doesn't sound like hell. This doesn't really garner that same image or that same, real feeling of torment. The very name of this album does not feel like it's being really delivered. And once again, the musical backbone through tracks such as Skeleton or Knife Through the Skull, which, whenever you look at the titles by themselves, seem really, aged. It seems like something that's been, done for 25 years and done to death. They're trying their best. They're doing everything that they can, but it's just, I don't know. These vocals feel amateur, and that gets us to our story. I remember a long time ago, whenever I was but a young and budding heavy metal fan. I was still in high school. I was at an FYE in the Pittsburgh area, which was away from my home a little bit, but not by much. And I encountered a gentleman who was selling his band's CD, his band's demo. They were very, very early on. And whenever you listen to this, You didn't hear very much, that's for sure. All that you heard was a faint drum in the background. It was recorded very poorly, and you just heard his vocals basically just going. He was trying his best. He obviously had inferior equipment. It sounded like absolute balls. I probably still have it somewhere. I don't know. That is the first thing I thought about whenever I listened to Torment. Whenever I listened to Chris Barnes' vocals, I thought about that gentleman who had access probably to the world's shittiest recording equipment, probably was not in a studio whatsoever. The most professional looking thing about this CD was the fact that he must have stolen a price gun from a store to put a $2 price tag on it, and that actually seems more appealing than listening to Chris Barnes' vocals on this album. And I know that some of you are going to argue that it has a savagery to it, that it really builds some sort of real internal mental picture, that it's definitely the sounds of somebody who is possessed, somebody who is deranged, somebody who has no idea what they are doing, and they've lost control completely. And you're wrong. This just sounds like the deterioration, the slow deterioration that has been occurring over the last, say, 5 to 10 years of somebody who is dubbed as a death metal legend. At this point, these are albums that are going to consistently struggle in these regards. And musically speaking, even with trying your best, that doesn't make an album good by its own self. It's a shame, too. Because usually, if there's a bass part, or if the bass just doesn't seem very strong, take Injustice for All, where the bass is kind of, non-existent in a lot of different levels, because it was a rib on Jason. You could still look at Injustice for All and see it as a terrific album, even with that little faux pas. It's something that instead becomes its own legend, and there's consideration as to why it happened. And it's a debate point. If you have a guitarist that's a little bit weak, that's a significant loss. It's something that really affects a lot, especially in heavy metal music. If you have a drummer that's a little bit off, it's one that has an effect also. But nothing is more distracting than listening to a record where the vocals just are distracting from the very first to the very last track. And that's the exact situation that we are getting with Torment. There is no point on this record where it feels as though the vocals improve enough to have and leave a sizable impression that is positive. And it's a real shame, because we had Suicide Silence a couple weeks ago. And that album, to many people, is absolutely horrible. It's the worst album that they've ever heard, they claimed. It's the worst album of the year. They're already pushing for that to really be the case. I myself found it to be, a little below average. This, once again, for the third straight year, the Triforce of shit perhaps has been complete, because Torment right now is an 8 out of 30. This is the first album under this new grading scale that is underneath the average portion. And once again, it's based around the fact that despite the band trying their best to really accent something in the background and make it happen, it's not enough to take your focus away from these vocals that are starting to sound like amateur hour. Whenever I can, more easily bear something that is truly amateur than somebody who has the benefit of premier recording equipment, that's a bad sign. But I know that there'll be many that will say that I'm wrong. And I'm encouraging all of that. I'm encouraging all of your comments about this album in the comments box below. But Torment was not for me. 6 Feet Under was for me a long time ago, and they have slowly but surely just sort of fallen off of my radar. Will I cover them again? Of course. I'm going to continuously give this band a shot, principally because I know that they have talent. It's shown, It's shown within their musical idea. It's shown within their concept. I don't fault anybody. It's just something where, once again, this feels tired and aged, and Chris Barnes sounds tired and aged. Let me know your thoughts. I'm CoverKillerNation. I'll talk to you later.